Never take advice from somebody you wouldn't trade places with, or never take directions from somebody who hasn't been where you're going. Now, the world is full of advice, and even well-intentioned, well-meaning advice from people who love you. That doesn't mean they know what they're talking about.
So how did a guy from Iowa become a hostage negotiator for the FBI?
And I did an interview with my hometown newspaper a couple years ago, and they said, how do you become the lead hostage negotiator for FBI in New York City? And I thought, and I went, you go up to I-80 and you make a right. You go about 2,000 miles. Yeah, it's just one left field opportunity after another, which is following your bliss, although wouldn't necessarily always describe it as bliss, but one thing after another out of left field, and just pursued it. All I wanted to be initially was a street cop in a big city. And then I ended up in Kansas City, and then, one thing led to another. My first year in Kansas City, Missouri, phenomenal year. Had a great year. They put me in a downtown, a lot of street life, a lot of street activity, and I loved it. But the standard policy at the time was, after you'd been in one of 3 of the inner city precincts for 1 year, then they were going to move you to one of the others. And they moved me from, the high crime, street crime area to largely a residential area, which is a different job. You're built for a different cat, somebody who's more patient and methodical. And I didn't try, I was bored for me, because I'm not terribly patient and I'm not terribly methodical. So I was getting a little bit bored, and then my father he finally accepted the fact that I was probably going to stay in law enforcement. He had just paid for a college degree, and I went out and I got a job that didn't require one. And if I'd have sent my kid to college and he turned around and got a job that didn't need the degree, I'd want my money back.
You'd be miffed.
Yeah, I'd be like, all right, so you owe me $40,000. Pay it back. But he said he realized that I was committed, so he had a buddy that was with the Secret Service, and he wanted to get me in federal law enforcement. He assumed it was a step up. That's not necessarily the case, but a lot of people have that perception. So I met that guy from Secret Service, and he said, I've traveled all over the world with the Secret Service. And at that, I grew up in Iowa. I think I'd seen Canada from a distance, maybe once. And I thought, travel all over the world, and somebody will pay for that? Yeah, man, I'll try that. And the Secret Service wasn't hiring, but the FBI was. I had seen an article about their first $1 billion budget. I knew enough about government budgets that was probably all salaries, hiring push. It turned out to be the first of a 3-year hiring push. I got in the door with a bunch of other people. And then they sent me to New York City. And I didn't want to go, but the guy that recruited me was a really decent guy. And he said, we're sending a lot of people to New York City these days. Do not take this job if you cannot go to New York City. Just don't do it. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. Mm-hmm. And I believe in sticking to my agreements. And so I got the transfer orders to New York. I did what I could to duck it within the rules, couldn't duck it. Got sent there, had a great assignment, and it was a phenomenal 14 years. Phenomenal. Worked with great people, made great cases. Won the Attorney General's Award. When my first office was Pittsburgh, and in the entire history of the Pittsburgh office, as far as I know, nobody in the Pittsburgh office ever won the Attorney General's Award. You could get the Director's Award or the Attorney General's Award. There are probably 3 FBI agents a year get the Attorney General's Award. 3 out of 10,000, it's a long shot. Mm-hmm. Not only did I win the Attorney General's Award in New York, but I was on a squad where nearly everybody had. I got there, terrorist task force, and I was surrounded by Michael Jordans.
The best.
They all had books and movies written about cases they made. Almost all of them had won the Attorney General's Award. Like, I was in awe of the accomplishments of these guys. And I guess now, even then I'm saying it out loud, they say, you become the average of the 5 people around you. And it's absolutely true. And I was surrounded by superstars. That was all in a day's work for them. And I was elevated by it. I learned from them. Work ethic. There is a cliche, work hard, play hard, but that's what these guys did. And they were known for showing up at bombing crime scenes at all hours of the night, no matter where they were. Those guys showed up and delivered. And they were cool. They were great guys to be around.
That's amazing. I love you're like the 5 people that you're spend the most time with. How, like, you knew that at the time that these were rock stars, and you got in a posture of, like, what was sort of your posture? You wanted to be to learn from them, or was it I wanted to be a part of the team? What was sort of your posture? Being a part of that group. Yeah,
I think it was mostly I just want to learn from them. And by sort of circumstance, I didn't really think about being part of the team. I like working with guys. I like working with guys who worked. But the other thing that was great about those guys, like one guy in particular I sat close to, dude's name was Larry Wack. And everybody was in awe of Larry's ability to get bad guys to cooperate voluntarily. And it was a real emphasis on great communication and voluntary collaboration with bad guys versus having a hammer on them. Like, I can remember a chief of detectives in one particular case in New York, and the chief of detectives said, the only way you get people to cooperate and be witnesses, you got to have a hammer on them. You need a hammer. And I was surrounded by guys that didn't need hammers. And Larry in particular, he had several informants that everybody was like, I have no idea how Larry got that guy to cooperate. And Larry was just a low-key guy, friendly. He'd sit and talk to people. He never shouted. He never interrogated. If you didn't want to talk, then he didn't, it was like he sat there and kept his mouth shut. And Larry just got people to cooperate by being this great application of emotional intelligence. And I think I probably learned the most from just being around Larry.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my, because it's interesting hearing that story, just the sort of posture of wanting to learn from people. And then one of my, I have to say it's one of my favorite stories in the book is how you needed experience. You know what I mean? At the hotline. So I thought that'd be a great one to just say, entrepreneurs are trying to, gain some experience. They have a passion typically, but, and many of them don't have necessarily all the experience. So I thought it'd be really helpful to say, at the beginning, or part of your origin stories, how did you get your first experience as a negotiator?
Yeah, well, I didn't realize it at the time, but there's kind of 2 sayings among the many to live by. Never take advice from somebody you wouldn't take trade places with, or never take directions from somebody who hasn't been where you're going. Now, the world is full of advice, and even well-intentioned, well-meaning advice from people who love you. That doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. And I think a lot of people get off track by taking advice from loved ones or people that they otherwise respect who have no idea what they're talking about. And I've taken some bad advice because that people loved me, which meant the advice was either well-intentioned or I respected them.
Yeah.
But they'd never been where I was going. So I decided I was going to be a hostage negotiator. I thought, how hard could it be? Negotiators talk to terrorists. I talk to people every day. I could do that. How hard could it be? My son and I like to joke that one of the unofficial Voss family mottos is, how hard could it be? Which is almost as disastrous as, they say redneck's famous last words are, hey, watch this.
How hard could it be?
How hard could it be? So,
Hostage negotiation.
yeah, I talk to people every day. I talk all day. I could do that. So I go to the head of the negotiation team in New York, woman, and present myself. Ta-da!
I've decided.
Yeah, I've decided.
I've decided.
I'm gifting you with me. And she just kind of looked up over her glasses and like, yeah. I go, I'm Chris Voss. She goes, yeah, I know who you are. Because she was on a terrorist squad close to me. And I go, I want to be a hostage negotiator. She's like, yeah, okay. Got any experience as a hostage negotiator? Nope. I know you're a cop. Were you a hostage negotiator there? I go, nope. She said, you got any education in psychology? Nope. You got anything in your background at all? Any experience, any training at all? And I'm like, nope.
But how hard could it be?
How hard could it be? Mm. And she says, no, you can't be on the team. And I was like, what? And I don't know that I stamped my feet and said, come on. But I sure felt that way. But then I said, all right, so look, there's got to be something I can do. Got to be something. She says, there is. She said, go volunteer on a suicide hotline. Now, until you've done that, leave me alone. And it just seemed to be obvious to me to do what she said. It's actually similar way to how I got in the Bureau in the first place. I asked and somebody told me and I did it. And they were shocked that I did it. And it always shocked me that people were shocked that I did it. But so back in those days, in the dark ages, horse and buggy, like an investigative tool was a phone book. Like if the first place you would go to, your Google, if you will, if you're going to Google a name today, Google was a phone book.
Yes, it was.
So, and I'd been taught that. So I went and got the phone book and I looked up suicide. I didn't find anything. And I thought, all right, so similar names. Call for help, maybe. So I looked up help. And it was helpline. It turned out to be suicide hotline, crisis hotline, that was billed as being founded by Norman Vincent Peale, Power of Positive Thinking. It was actually founded by his wife, Ruth Stafford Peale, who's really responsible for the motivation and organization of Norman Vincent Peale. A lot of people used to say she's the power behind the throne. Ruth said, told her husband she wanted a suicide hotline and for him to get the funding together for it. But it's helpline. So I go to helpline, I volunteer, I'm there a couple months, I'm learning a skill, transformative. And I came back to the woman in charge of the team, said, just want you to know I've been on a hotline for 5 months. She's like, you're kidding me. You really?
That was a get rid of you mechanism.
Yeah. And I was like, no, you told me to do it and I did it. She says, I tell everybody to do that. Nobody does it. What hotline you at? Helpline. I volunteered on helpline. Is Jim still there? Yeah. I'm like, yeah. She says, and so there were 5 other people in front of me in the line to get on the team. None of them were lifting a finger. Following, she told them all to go volunteer on a suicide hotline. They had, one guy had a degree in psychology. They had resumes, but they didn't have initiative. And none of them volunteered. And I volunteered. She jumped me over everybody. I got the next slot.
Man, that's unbelievable. The thing that's interesting is that she didn't give you any, hey, go here. I see that was the thing I missed and I clearly missed was that I thought she had like, hey, you're going to need to go to this hotline. You had to go find
the
hotline and the one that you went to is the one she was familiar with.
Yeah. And, and in a way, there were 2 I could have gone to. And one was a crisis line. The other was a suicide line. And the difference is a suicide hotline, if you call and you're not suicidal, they refer you to the crisis line. Crisis line, you get more different types. Like somebody could be grieving, devastating personal loss, but not suicidal.
Yeah.
And actually, I probably learned the most about grieving and coping with all kinds of trauma that I never would have learned if I'd have been on a suicide line because they wouldn't have taken the grieving calls. Like you could be devastated in grief over the loss of your father, a parent, a child, just devastated and not suicidal. And that was probably the most satisfying type of person to deal with on the hotline, because you could typically do the most to help them. If somebody's suicidal, there's probably recurring issues that they're dealing with. There's sort of a system that they're caught up in, and getting people out of systems of their own design is very difficult. But a grief loss is probably a temporary affair. They're not caught in a system, so you can really help them. Being an emotional paramedic on a battlefield of life, the grieving person is suffering from probably a one-time event versus a systematic stressor.
Well, one of the things that I think was interesting, that is along the theme. It seems like you've learned a lot in your life, right? It's probably
if I got has
life tamed you?
If I got any, forgive me, but what I want to hit that point that if I have any ability at all, it's that I'm open to learning.
Has that always been there?
I think so. I don't know, I'm not sure that I was born with it, but my father was a real figure it out kind of guy, and so he'd give you a list of stuff to do and expect you to figure it out.
It's awesome. It's a value for you, right? You're always learning.
1000%.
It's incredible. I think one of the things that I thought was really interesting about just the hotline was the call you thought you totally crushed, and I think it's connected to that sort of value of learning for you. But right. I thought that would be a good one to talk about. It's just when you thought you totally destroyed it and you're like, I own this thing. How hard could it be?
Yeah. Well, negotiation is a perishable skill. Emotional intelligence is a perishable commodity. Or maybe plastic and dormant. So if you don't practice, Jim Camp, who wrote Start With No in 2002, referred to negotiation as a human performance event. He had spent time as a football coach. And so by definition, if it's similar to a sporting event, you don't practice, you get worse. Even if you're doing it all the time. Mm-hmm. Like Tiger Woods didn't win all those championships unless he got on the practice tees.
Yeah.
He practiced constantly. And that's why he didn't rely on simply playing in tournaments to win. So I didn't realize that. And you come out of the suicide hotline training, crisis hotline training, sharp. I mean, sharp. Any good training, you're going to come out really sharp. And you're going to think it's riding a bike. Well, it's not. So over the course of a year, I picked up a lot of bad habits because I wasn't focusing on skill maintenance. I wasn't focusing on my results, repetitions. I was just doing it. And so a year in, and I come up for my annual review, and this guy named Jim, great guy, very positive, would always joke around because volunteer burnout is the first problem with suicide hotline, crisis hotline. Funding is a close second, but volunteers get burned out fast. And Jim was a happy-go-lucky, friendly dude. So I did the call that he monitored, and the person that called said, "Thank you so much. You helped me so much. That was so great." And I'm walking back to the room where Jim is listening in, basically polishing my fingernails on my jacket.
A little extra swagger.
Yeah, that was great. I rocked. I was so good that guy congratulated me. And I sat down and Jim was like, "That was horrible." I mean, that was one of the worst things I ever heard. And I remember thinking did you didn't listen to my call.
Yeah, you're listening to somebody else.
Yeah, you listen to somebody else. I mean, and I said to him Jim, I don't know. I mean, I did such a great job. The guy congratulated me. He goes, "Let's start with that." That's the first problem. They need to feel empowered. If he congratulated you, then you did the work, and as soon as you're off the phone with him, he's all alone again. He says, so you didn't make him feel empowered at all. You took all the credit. He's lost without you. what's he, you didn't help him at all. And then he just went, because I'd given him advice, and advice is never helps anybody unless you know what you're talking about. And then it's not advice, it's guidance. And it still puts it back on you. But I'd given him advice. Here's your problem, this is what you need to do. Oh, thank you so much. It was horrible. And it didn't help the guy at all. And that was when like, wow, I gotta go back and I gotta restudy everything.
Mm.
And I got fascinated by the process. I started thinking about it. I started doing extra reading. I went back to the executive director of the hotline. I'm like, this is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm trying to learn. And she was like, wow, you gotta teach here. There's no better way. Well, teaching something is one of the best ways for skill maintenance.
You had to have a command over it.
Yeah, because people are going to embrace you. So that was when I started teaching.
It's unbelievable. The thing that maybe it feels like a switch, right? Where you're like, you go from confidence and swagger to basically somebody telling you where you missed, and the receptivity that you had is like, all right, I missed it. I got to learn this thing.
Yeah,
it definitely is that's a remarkable trait, right? To be able to take feedback like that and be able to apply it quickly and go deeper to say, what was I really missing, and practice it.
Yeah. That's a hard thing. Because you got to ask, if somebody's saying something to you, you got to say to yourself, what if they're right? At least let me think about it. And, Jim was a supervisor who was in charge of evaluation. So it would have been really tough for me to say, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I thought was another interesting part of the book is how many times you encountered this Filipino dictator. Right?
Well, the bad guy, the Filipino terrorist.
Oh yeah, terrorist. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he came in. He's in the book a couple of times. Yeah. I was like, okay, so you go from this sort of I'm going from how hard can it be as a hostage negotiator? You go get your experience, and then fast forward, and you're sitting here negotiating with a Filipino terrorist. What was sort of the track that got you to sort of that place?
Well, again, different stuff fell out of the sky. So I got to the crisis negotiation unit. I got promoted to the full-time hostage negotiators. Every law enforcement agency has full-time and part-time people. Mostly part-time. There's usually a few full-time guiding it. And I had, I primarily got there because there was a senior FBI executive in New York City that didn't like me. And in my view, every bad thing that's happened to me has led to something better. And I wanted to stay in New York, and I wanted to work terrorism my whole life. And I saw myself as a terrorism guy. And this guy in charge of the terrorism in New York just did not like me, and made it very clear to me that I was never going to advance while he was around. And so I applied, and I was 50-50 terrorism or hostage negotiation. Gary Nessner, who was in charge of the negotiation unit, he wanted me. He'd been bugging me. He every now and then he said, "What's it going to take to get you down here?" So I finally applied, and I get down there. And early on, there's a training session comes up in the Philippines, and I work my way into it. They didn't plan on sending me, but I worked my way into it. So I had been in the Philippines when the first kidnapping happened that I worked. And they were like, Chris just got back from the Philippines. He knows his way around. He's worked terrorism. This is terrorism. We're going to send him. And it was not a particularly sympathetic victim. Kidnapped victims rarely are. They're usually somebody doing something stupid. Mm-hmm. And they're getting themselves in a lot of trouble. There's someplace they should not have been. They should have known better. Or for whatever reason, it's not the classic child of a wealthy person who gets taken by circumstances. Man on Fire, Denzel Washington's film, which I enjoyed a lot. little innocent little girl of a rich guy. That ain't the case. It's somebody who's someplace they shouldn't have been. So I'm like, cool, I don't care. First of all, I want to rescue a hostage. Secondly, it's also a mechanism to get at some really bad people, try to screw up their organization by giving them a process that they just don't want any more of. So we get out there, and kidnap for ransom is about getting bait money to the bad guys. It's the same reason you give bait money in a bank. If you said bank tellers are not allowed to give bank robbers any money at all, then bank tellers would be getting killed right and left.
Yeah.
But the smart move is to give them a little bit of money. Save the bank teller's life, the money's evidence, the bad guy leaves. That's the best analogy for working a kidnapping. Now, the problem is this dude, Jeffrey, who's first kidnapping and worked in the Philippines, his family's got no money. But even though they got no money compared to the Philippines, a poor American is wealthy by Filipino standards. I mean, developing world people living in abject poverty. If you're making $10,000 a year in the U.S., you're wealthy in the Philippines. You got running water in the U.S. You're probably better off than a lot of people in the outer regions of the Philippines. So, family's got no money, but I figure worst comes to worst, we can scare up some bait money someplace, not government money. So it's got to be family donated, friend donated, and it's always the family's decision. Government does not decide whether or not a ransom's going to get paid. It's always a family decision. You can advise, because then you don't want the family giving them every last dime. But we get there, I figure we're gonna handle this case, and we ain't gonna offer them a dime. And we just start wearing this guy down slowly with tactical empathy. What I now realize is tactical empathy, calibrated application of emotional intelligence, know how it works, get a feel for the brain's mechanism, and wear them out and not make them mad. A hero of mine who was a UN hostage negotiator once said, the ability to exhaust the other side is a hallmark of a great negotiator. And in many cases, that's the truth. So we're going to wear this guy out. And we wear him down, and we wear him down, and we wear him down. And finally, the hostage walks away. Which was...
No bait money?
No bait money. Just,
oh my gosh.
Because what you do is you engage in a great process, and you wait for the black swan. You wait for something good to fall out of the sky. And you don't know what it is, and you have to be able to live with not knowing what it is. One of my favorite sources of information, Andrew Huberman, a great neuroscientist, I'm listening to him, and he says, people think in terms of duration, path, and outcome, DPO, duration, path, and outcome. Where am I going? How am I going to get there? How long is it going to take? Well, to embrace the idea of a black swan, you got to let go of where you're going. And that's really unsettling.
Yeah.
Until you get used to it. People in the past have said, the black swan method, that's kind of Tai Chi, that's very Zen-like. And I don't see myself as a Zen dude. So I'd be like, what are you talking about? Zen? I don't know. Zen from Jen, I don't know. But it's letting go of the outcome so something good can happen. And that's exactly what happened in this case. We got the upper hand by giving him the illusion of control. And then we waited for something good to happen. And literally on Maundy Thursday, the Thursday before Easter, the celebration of when Jesus prayed in Gethsemane, they let their guard down enough that our hostage realized he could just walk away. And he walked away, and he was out. And then the spectacular thing about the whole case was, I'm back in the Philippines about 3 weeks after on another kidnapping, and I catch up with a negotiator that I'd coached previously. I was an international negotiation coach. And he said, hey, you are not going to believe who called me on the phone, because the guy I coached, he engaged in an undercover capacity undercover phone, undercover name. But the bad guy knew he had to be talking to somebody from the government, and he didn't care. So he calls him back, basically to pay his respects. He calls him on the phone and he says, have you been promoted yet? Because you're really good. I was going to kill the American, and you kept me from doing it. They should promote you. And he hung up the phone, and it was complete respect. And the underlying message also was, I would deal with you again. Which was
shocking.
Cool.
Yeah, but to deal with you again, knowing that, there was the guy ultimately, he was on the losing end on that.
He lost everything.
Yeah, but I would deal with you again.
And he was happy to deal with this guy again. And he knew from the government, he knew that, like, if they met face to face on a battlefield, they'd kill each other. But you can respect your enemies. And you're probably a higher level of human being if you can respect your enemies. And they respected each other.
It's unbelievable. I've wondered, you obviously have, a body of work, but you've got, you got a lot in you, right? You got a lot of information. You've spent a long time learning. And so I was like, I wanted to know how did you get from beat cop, hostage negotiator, winning awards, teacher, to writing a book? How'd the book come about?
I never, in the earlier days, I never thought a book was that important. As soon as I got out of the FBI, I went back to school. The Rodney Dangerfield movie, Back to School, is probably so old, nobody knows what I'm talking about. But I kind of felt like Rodney Dangerfield. But I was with a lot of other Rodney Dangerfields. And one guy in particular said, you got to get a book out. You got to get a book out. And I was like, yeah. When I'm ready. And I didn't want to just put a book out, period. I wanted to make sure that it, was substantive, it was complete, it was thorough, which is not really necessary. And the more consultants I talk to, they're like, you got to get a book out. Like, if you want to consult on anything, you want to coach, people are going to wonder why you don't have a book out. And it becomes your best business card, your best marketing, your best advertisement, period.
It's an anchor for you.
Yeah. But I was like, I don't know. And went back and I taught at Harvard, taught in the law school in their negotiation course, and got a lot of encouragement from other people that had books. And finally, after, my son and I, Brandon was a part of the process the entire time. I was always a sounding board contributor to the ideas. Before I knew it, he used to get himself out of trouble in high school using hostage negotiation techniques. I didn't even know what was going on. Mm-hmm. He got himself out of a lot of trouble using hostage negotiation, which I only found out about 5 years after the fact. But stuff works. So we started working on the book, decided to put it out. And then some of the classic advice, some of the advice on writing a book is go to a bookstore, find the book that you love, think about why you love it, and write that book or get that guy to help you write it. And I was always blown away by this book called Never Eat Alone. Keith Frazzi and his co-author was Tal Raz. And I used to carry that book around to the different writers that we try to hire, and I'd hand them the book and I'd say, this is one of the most readable books I've ever read. It's instructional and entertaining. Most instructional books are not good reads. And Never Eat Alone was. And I'd hand the book to writers and say, we're going to write this book. And they'd be like, okay, and then not write it. And finally I got so frustrated, I'm like, let me pitch Tal Raz directly. And that's another thing, because I think a saying attributed to Gretzky is never a shot on goal is always a good shot. Mm-hmm. I was never scared to talk to anybody. And so first of all, I wanted an introduction to Tal, and I talked to my agent, and he said, well, yeah, I don't know Tal. And I thought, you're an agent, you should be able to
this is your
cold call him. And he, no, I don't know. And then I went to the publisher. We had And they said, nah, we don't know Tall either. And finally I'm like, this is annoying. So he was on LinkedIn. I sent him a message on LinkedIn, hit him up cold on LinkedIn. Hey, hostage negotiator, want to write a book. He emailed me back and said, let's talk. So I met him in New York. Really interesting guy. And he said, like, I think the book is a great idea. I love the concept. He said, but I'm not sure how much in advance you're going to get. And he said, here's my fee, flat fee. You got to guarantee me X amount of money. And he said, because I'm getting that. And I got a wife and I got kids. And I have to look out for them. Because somebody's going to give me this amount of money for a book in this time frame. And my wife's going to kill me if I take your book with no guarantee. And initially we couldn't make the deal. I said, okay, I respect that. I could have guaranteed it. I had enough money saved. I wasn't willing to gamble my savings.
Yeah.
You know, because everybody said, the book's not going to do that well. How did they know, right?
Yeah.
So, but then
it's done pretty well.
Exactly. And we got a good deal from the publisher. We got we got a healthy advance. And I went back to my agent and I said, we could get Tall now. And went back and we cut the deal with Tall, and he turned out to be a genius. He is a genius. Every single business book that he's written, co-authored, co-written, is either a New York Times or Wall Street Journal bestseller. He is that good.
Super talented.
And phenomenal. And he's the reason the book is as readable as it is. Fantastic. He interviewed me and my son Brandon, gathered data from us, pulled it together. Brandon is the unofficial co-author. I recognize him in the acknowledgments.
Yeah, you do.
But Tall is a genius writer.
And so the success of the book, when did it come out?
2016.
Yeah,
May of 2016.
And to date, how many copies has it sold?
Globally we're over 3 million.
Yeah,
Which
is amazing.
We're over 2 million domestic U.S. It sells well all over the world. It's used in those cultures. It's not Americans in those cultures. It sells well in China. We just re-upped in China. Over 300,000 copies in China. So it's Chinese with each other. I was in Dubai last November, run into a female Chinese entrepreneur, business person in China. She says, hey, I use your book every day. And I said, okay, just let me get this straight. You're Chinese? Yeah. You live in China? Yeah. So therefore, you're using it on other Chinese? Yeah. And it works great? Yeah. I'm like, all right, I just want to be clear.
That's a case study right there.
Yeah.
It's definitely a people book. It's not just a culture book. That's
exactly right.
It's really, it's impressive. So the impression I got, I knew it was carefully crafted because I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of books.
Let me tell you, and forgive me again.
No, it's okay.
Tell you, he's carefully crafted. Let me tell you how wacky Tall Roz is. Because we're working on another book now. Tall's not involved because it's sort of a supplemental book. But every other writer wants an outline and an order and lay out the game plan, execute the game plan. Tall delivers for my review, Brandon and I's review, the middle of the book first. Like the middle of the book. Like he sends me first chapters are 4, 5, and 6. I'm like,
that's what he's labeled them.
Yeah. His chapter, and I remember what happened to chapters 1, 2, 3? He says, I don't write them first. I write the middle of the book. I'm like, okay. And then he wrote the last chapter next to last. And then he wrote the first chapter last.
Wow.
Like just a complete artist. So.
And that's his process.
That's his process. I mean, a brilliant He's brilliant technically, and he's an artist also. And to the middle of the book first, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a true arc to it. The reason, what I was saying was, the reason I could tell it was carefully crafted is there was this underlying sort of more information theme that I felt the whole time. And I was like, when I started to think about it, I was like, okay, that's where the one of the most impressive hooks about it is I had that feeling the whole time. And I was like, he's definitely got a consulting business because people are going to want more.
Yeah,
that was the impression I had. I was like, it's so
that's
well
cool.
written.
That's really insightful. It's absolutely there, and you're the first person that's pointed that out.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it sort of woos you. I mean, that was one of the things I was like, we have to sit down and talk with Chris Voss. I mean, there's so much applicability, just what you do with your consulting, firm and stuff like that. I was just like, man, this book's so well done. Well, you mentioned Black Swans earlier, and I'm like, okay, I just want you to take a couple minutes and talk about that, because one of the things that I think is so interesting for somebody who has named their company that, uses it as a sort of an anchor of a beacon, I guess, maybe of the technique and what you're about, and then you are self-admittedly impatient, or maybe not the most patient person, but it takes observation and patience to be able to sort of let that black swan show up. So I wanted you to just kind of say, here's what the heck a black swan is. This is the way that I think about it. And just some of the deep dive on what in the world is a black swan.
Well, a black swan is something small that makes all the difference in the world. And it's going to be hidden, and you're never going to see it in advance. And a lot of people have trouble with this emotionally, because once you get experience, you think, I know what's going on. And I can explain to you intellectually, well, you're never going to have all the information. And so many people emotionally reject that. But there's always something you don't know. My military brothers would call it an asymmetric world. It's an asymmetric world, period. Imperfect information. You always have you never have perfect information. It's impossible. Your information is always flawed. And if it's always flawed, either by a bad piece of information or omitted information, and it's usually omitted, then you cannot know the best outcome, because your information is flawed. So it's impossible to know the best outcome. Now, the hard thing to wrap your mind around is you're hiding information. What are your deadlines? What's your budget? Like, how often does somebody say how much money they actually have? That's hidden information.
Yeah.
Or how inclined they are to make the deal or break the deal. Well, that you always have that, which means the other side always has that. Which then the hard thing to wrap your mind around is what's in the overlap. There are even better opportunities in the overlap. So there are always black swans. There are always little things that could make all the difference in the world if you only knew what they were. And if you're holding it back, you only hold back important information. So the other side is holding back important information also. Like, if they felt like it, would they just give it to you anyway? If they felt like it, could they adjust the order that they're helping you? Like, you start thinking about it, what could they do if they felt like it? Those are the black swans. And they're always there. And simultaneously in your demeanor, what are the little things you could do that make all the difference in the world? What are the little things, the unexpected things that are game changers? And they're always there. So the idea is engage in a process, realize that you got to let go of the outcome. And that was, in writing the book with Tall, that was one of the big things, because Brandon and I were completely used to letting go of the outcome.
Yeah. It was practice for you. You already knew. Yeah.
Engage in a negotiation, see what happens. And Tall was like, we got to talk about goals. And we're like, no, because goals are limiting things. Like the more focused you're on the goal, the more tunnel vision you have, the less likely you are to see opportunity. And people say, well, you should be goal-oriented. You should focus on the goal. Keep your eye on the prize. Well, keeping your eye on the prize gives you tunnel vision, gives you blinders. Mm. And Tall says, you got to talk about goals. And we're like, no, it's not good. He says, no, you have to, because human beings are wired to have goals. And so we said, okay, we'll talk about them, but then your goal is to exceed your goal. Like, all right, so this is, I failed unless I've cleared this optimal goal.
Okay.
And we'll put it in that context. But this is, before I'd run across Huberman, the duration path outcome thing. It was really the underlying theme of me working kidnappings, duration path and outcome. Bad guys got a duration path and outcome. Take them out of it to get the upper hand, but take them out of it gently because they're going to feel disoriented. It's okay if they're disoriented, you just don't want them angry. So the whole idea of finding a black swan is going to be disorienting for the other side. The other side's going to have a goal too. That's why you got to use tactical empathy, the calibrated application of emotional intelligence, because I'm going to make you feel uncertain. And if I don't earn your trust, then that uncertainty is going to turn into anger. But if I've got your trust, you're going to be comfortable with the uncertainty and you're going to go with me because you trust me.
It's powerful. I think the not being attached to the outcome
right
is really powerful. I like the technique that you just said, which is like, hey, we got to talk about goals. And you knew Tall, he needed, that's something that he needed. And entrepreneurs need that, right? They've, many of them, not all of them, write business plans that have goals and outcomes. Right. And what you the way that you sort of were able to still commit to say, hey, how do it's the exceeding. So for you still had no goal. You just knew it was above a threshold, but it was able to compromise and give him a goal. Right.
Yeah, well, I don't like the word compromise, but we didn't compromise, but he made a point. And we didn't have a better way to articulate it at the time. And there's another guy that I'm working with these days too, Tucker Max. Tucker Max, interesting cat. He's written a bunch of New York Times bestsellers and has a company now that helps people write books. Scribe Media. And Tucker tells us this all the time. He says, the expert's curse is you've forgotten what it's like not to know. And so consequently, you want to explain things the way you currently think about them, which is really confusing for somebody who's just starting. You've forgotten what it's like not to know. And there are a number of books out there by experts right now that explain things the way they think about them now. And I read them and I'm just lost because I don't have your degree of understanding. I'm a beginner here. And that was Tall's point. Beginners have to have an understanding of goals.
Okay.
When you become good at this, when you're at the martial arts term, the re-level, the shu-ha-ri, beginning, intermediate, and expert. At the re-level, you think in completely different terms than you did at the shu level, the beginner's level. And the rethinker has to understand, the master thinker has to understand how to explain the fundamentals to the beginner. And Tall was so smart, I didn't understand these terms then, but he had a point.
Because it wasn't for you guys, it was for them.
It's for the reader.
Oh, wow.
And he said,
powerful.
For a beginning reader, you have to address this issue. And we said, okay.
That's powerful. The best writers are putting the reader first.
Yeah.
Right? And if you knew your audience the way that both of you guys really did and do, you can tell it was masterfully done. Really, really well done.
Tall Roz, man, I'm telling you. Brilliant writer.
It's the real deal. I one of the things that I do think is an impression you've made on me is your expressed appreciation for those close to you and that have supported you and helped you.
Oh, wow, yeah. You want to go far, want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team.
Yeah.
You gotta have a team.
Yeah. Just the way that you celebrated your son and included him. And you can tell that he adds a lot of value, and you recognize and appreciate that often.
He may be the most talented negotiator I've ever run across.
Wow. It's incredible. Did he where like these separate talents, or did he observe you?
You know, he started soaking it in. I'm not sure to define exactly what is. He's got a superior intelligence in sort of the assembly of concepts. And I can remember when he was about 3, I had rented out some low-income housing property. I owned it, and I did a lot of the work there myself in my spare time. And I can remember I was putting his cabinet together, and he was sitting there watching me, and he started to hand me the tools just before I needed them. Like, I'm following the directions, I'm assembling this thing, and he's paying attention. And he'd reach down and he grabbed the screwdriver just before I needed it and handed it to me. And I'm like, wow. He's got the ability to assemble ideas. And then he was around this stuff and just started soaking it in before I had any idea that he was soaking it in. And I started hearing about it a little bit when he was in high school. And he got himself out of the principal's office a couple times using hostage negotiation techniques. And so yeah, I had the ability to absorb the ideas and then add to the thought significantly.
I like your his. I think you said it was his superior intellect to be on the assembly of concepts.
Something like that.
Something like that. You just said. They'll play it back. I call that a framework, and one of the things that you did really well in the book is that you're like, I want to be able to put together the system, right, and to systematize what you've learned and how you've refined it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really helpful for people, especially entrepreneurs, and I think even new entrepreneurs, is kind of providing this system and something that's very present. I'm going to say on a daily basis when you are an entrepreneur is negotiating on some level.
Yep.
It is present every day.
Mm-hmm.
So what is sort of what's sort of like your sort of 3 to 5 sort of topics or part of your framework that you think is our daily living for an entrepreneur in negotiating?
Well, if you're constantly trying to have a positive impact on people, then you're always ready for negotiation. Now that's really hard because the circumstances can gang up on you, and between tired, some bad luck, like the other day, an Uber driver, a Lyft driver, just drove away from me, I was wrong, but I'd had a long day. I was tired. I lost some property. I was mad at myself for losing a property. I'm in an airport. The airport signage is completely screwed up. A lot of airports stack the deck against Lyft drivers and Uber drivers.
Yeah.
And I got upset with this dude because I got an amygdala and I was tired and I was frustrated and I was worn out and a couple things had gone with me. Like, I melt down on people like everybody else does. Consequently, I lost that negotiation. And from my perspective, I was completely in the right. And after the guy was gone, I realized that he was right also. And I think the airport intentionally put up confusing signs because they got it in for the Lyft drivers. And actually, there's reasons for that. I mean, taxes from taxis. The taxi business is an important business to any city. There's a whole bunch of reasons for it.
Yeah.
But I melted down on this dude. I'd gotten out of trying to have a positive impact on people. You're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind, which means when you're in a negative frame of mind, by definition, you are dumber. And in a negative frame of mind, not only are you dumber, but you're even more convinced that you're right.
Oh, man.
And you're less likely to take in information. And that's exactly where I was. So you gotta have mental hygiene, just like you need oral hygiene. You gotta pay attention to it or you lapse into negativity. So you asked me, how do entrepreneurs be better at negotiation? To start with, if you're trying to have a positive impact on people, you're in a positive frame of mind, you're smarter. It's a completely different frame because you never know when you're going to be in a negotiation. Anytime the words I want or I need are coming across your lips or in your mind, you're in a negotiation. And that's the distinction between sales and negotiation. Sales is trying to get the words I want or I need out of somebody else's mouth. As soon as they're saying I want or I need your product or your service, you just cross the threshold from sales to negotiation. At that point, you're in a negotiation. And you're going to get a better deal if you started from the very beginning trying to have a positive impact on them. They're going to be more inclined to listen to you. They're going to think more. They're going to listen to your options more. They're going to be more flexible with you. And you may be only negotiating over actions and time. You may not be negotiating over money. If you wait till you're talking about money in a negotiation, the negotiation has been in play for a while. Mm-hmm. And you are behind already. If you only think you're negotiating when you're talking about money. Some entrepreneurs that we were coaching, Brandon was coaching several years ago, were trying to sell a service to Walmart. And they went to visit a Walmart facility to get a tour. And Brandon tried to convince them that they weren't going for a tour. Walmart was going to be negotiating with them the whole time.
Yeah.
And they're like, nah,
they're pretty good at it.
We're just going to go for a tour. We're just going to look around. And he went down. Money was never mentioned. And then they came back. And then they got a proposal from Walmart over price. And they went, oh my God, that tour was a negotiation. We negotiated for 3 days and we didn't even know it. And they were like, wow, we should have listened to you. The most dangerous negotiations are when you don't know you're in. So if you're interacting with someone and the words I want or I need are coming over somebody's lips, it's a negotiation. And to have the upper hand and to be smart and to be able to think through options and increase their flexibility, it all starts if you try to have a positive impact on them. Because you're going to be ahead of the game. And then practicing the little skills over and over and over and over and over. So that in the moment, it'll come to you. Because you got caught off guard. Like I never ask anybody a question for yes. I always, do you disagree? Are you against? Is this a bad idea? Have you given up on? Is this a ridiculous idea? Everything I pitch is a no-oriented question. And I do it with the TSA guy in the airport, with the Starbucks clerk. I'm constantly doing it. I did it a couple of months ago. I'm just keeping myself sharp on the no-oriented questions. And the phone rings and I'm in the middle of a negotiation that I'm not really prepared for, but I'm getting my results reps in because I only ask people no-oriented questions. Is it a stupid idea for me to ask you directions?
Not can I ask you directions?
Right.
Is it a stupid idea?
Like, all right, so and in an airport, TSA guys, you're looking for the best place to eat in an airport. TSA guys work there. They know the best place to eat.
They do.
They are not there to give directions. So how do I get directions out of a TSA guy every time? Little empathy. Empathy is what's the other side thinking? He's thinking like, hey, bozo, I'm not here to give you directions. So I'll walk up to a TSA guy and I say, I'm sorry, I know it is not your job to give directions to bozos in airports. And now they're looking at me because that's an empathy statement. And I go, is it a ridiculous idea for me to ask you where the best place to eat in the airport is? And then, no, it's fine. Here's where I like to go. This is a place I always eat at. Otherwise, if you say, hey man, can you give me directions to a good place to eat in the airport? Dude, or a guy or gal's probably going to go like, I don't eat here.
Here every day, and I bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah, exactly
That's what I
right.
do.
Yeah, you're fasting every day that you're
Oh
here.
my gosh. Well, why don't we take a quick break, and then we can come back and kind of dive into some of the techniques that you use in negotiations for entrepreneurs.
I will. Let me teach you my favorite acronym. Guy on our team, Troy. When you throw something like that out, he always says, "Slap." Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Slap.
All right. Good. That's what he says. He straight up just says slap.
He's got us all saying slap.